Little over a week remains before the NBA trade deadline, and the Miami Heat are motivated to trade Jimmy Butler. But could the team already be in the hunt for De'Aaron Fox? We'll break down the latest reports on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, however you might be tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramill. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I have a lot of stuff to get to today. De'Aaron Fox could be on the move, but are the Heat on his list of preferred destinations? Plus, we get to questions about what Kel'el Ware means to the Heat's future. But first, have to start with the latest on Jimmy Butler trade talks. The Heat have reportedly lowered their asking price for Jimmy Butler and are taking calls from teams other than the Phoenix Suns. Teams like the Milwaukee Bucks and the Memphis Grizzlies continue to be mentioned as potential suitors, and the Heat have reportedly loosened their stance on what they want in a Butler deal. The Heat had previously been looking for good role players who can help them win now, draft capital, and they did not want to take back any salary beyond 2026. But now they might be open to deals that don't fall within those parameters. Brian Windhorst on Tuesday went so far as to say that Jimmy Butler will get traded. So, David, what do you think the Heat can realistically hope for in return for Jimmy?
That's a huge question mark. I think when you look at what they're willing to kind of let go of some of the tight restrictions in terms of what they'd get back for Jimmy Butler, what is the most likely scenario? That they're going to get some kind of role player. They're going to want draft capital. I think it's the restrictions regarding salary beyond 2026. And we're already hearing, 2026 is the golden time where you can already start planning your next acquisition, Luka Doncic, et cetera. There's big names that might become available in 2026. But I think from Miami's perspective, you can't afford to give up on acquiring players that can help this team win now, because you have to be in the playoff hunt. And you also have to acquire draft capital. If there's anything, if you wind up getting salary back that might be able to dip into that 2026 era, that doesn't work. Like, you can already start clearing. You can clear the books next year. You can clear the books at some other point down the road. Kick that can down till some other time. It's not feasible. We've seen too many teams clear cap space and wind up with absolutely nothing to show for it. And I think from Miami's perspective, that's where you can really kind of say, you know what, we don't care. What if we have somebody on the books for $30 million a year beyond 2026? We'll figure something out. We'll find another way to clear that salary eventually. And especially if you're able to get more draft capital in return, if that requires a trade or something in order to unload those players or that player, that's the strategy there. But you need to be able to get something of someone of value that can help this team this year, and also draft capital. I think that's the most important thing. And you're not going to get all three of those things.
I'm hoping at this point that you get any of those things, right? And so, but if to your point about 2026, I think I'm with you here. I understood. Look, we're going to trade Jimmy Butler. We're not going to get a superstar back for Jimmy Butler. We're probably not going to get that number one pick back for Jimmy Butler. We're not going to go get that blue chip young prospect for Jimmy Butler. So we need some sort of avenue to get that next superstar player. And Miami clearly circled 2026 because we know what the free agent class looks like. But let's also be realistic about it. Superstars don't move via free agency anymore. And Miami's entire strategy for, I think, for most of the Jimmy Butler era has been hoping and dreaming. Hoping and dreaming that Damian Lillard falls in your lap. Hoping and dreaming that Kevin Durant falls in your lap. Hoping and dreaming that star player X falls in your lap. And all that hoping and dreaming got them nowhere but here, to this, broken relationship, essentially where they're at. And yes, they made 2 finals, but no championships to show for it. That's where they ended up with it. And if the strategy for another 2 years is going to be hoping and dreaming, as a Heat fan, that does not make me feel very good. Now, hope it's a little bit different because at least you're planning for that cap space, but as opposed to hoping and dreaming for one of these players to force your way. But like I just said, superstars don't become free agents anymore. They figure out where they want to go.
Mentioned, Yeah, those players you just mentioned, they were all traded. Lillard, Durant,
Yeah.
they were moved
And
via
let's
free,
look at the
not
names
via
in
free agency.
2026.
Yeah,
De'Aaron Fox is one that's always mentioned. It looks like he's going to get traded. So
this
I'm
week.
imagining he's going to sign that extension. He's not going to be a free agent in 2026. Do we really think Luka Doncic is going to be a free agent in 2026? Maybe. But I'm not, again, hoping and dreaming for that. Kevin Durant, I know he's going to be a name that's out there. I don't know if I want Kevin Durant at 37 or 38 years old, right? Like that's going to be a very different Kevin Durant than what we even have now,
Right.
who already has availability concerns and all these things. And then you kind of look down the other names. Jaren Jackson Jr. is out there. Is that the guy that's worth planning for 2 years in advance? I mean, Jaren Jackson's an awesome player. I'm not planning I'm not wasting 2 years just waiting for him to become a free agent and hoping that he's not going to sign some sort of extension where he's clearly very happy, or at least right now in Memphis. Is Trae Young that player that you're like, nobody even wanted to trade for Trae Young when his asking price was worse than DeJounte Murray's 6 months ago. And now we're going to wait around for 2 years hoping that he becomes a free agent. At this point, I'm with you. I would say, look, if we can have the space in 2026, great. But if there's an opportunity to go get even a high-level role player who's a good fit with Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo and Kel'el Ware in this group, go ahead and do it, and then figure out 2026 in 2026. And the other part of this, too, is because these players don't enter free agency anymore, you will actually need salary to go ahead and trade for these guys when they become available, right? And so if the option is something like, I don't know, I'm going to take two names and just don't take these names to mean anything other than just names on contracts. Bruce Brown on an expiring contract versus like Chris Middleton with another year left on his deal, and that does expire in 2026. It could make more sense for Miami to take the Middleton contract, despite the fact that it doesn't expire for another year after Bruce Brown's contract. Because if Bruce Brown's contract expires this summer, you can't use that to facilitate a trade anymore, unless it's on a complicated sign and trade and blah, blah, and that gets weird. But with Middleton, he becomes an expiring contract next year. Ditto for a player that's under contract through 2026. Like that player can become an expiring contract in 2020, 2026, 2027, and you could potentially use that player to facilitate another trade. And you don't have to part with a core piece like Herro or Bam in order to make, or potentially you don't have to part with those players in order to make that big swing. So I'm with for whatever the Heat are looking for at this point. My priority is whatever I get in return, as long as it's not Jimmy Butler and not Bradley Beal, I'm happy with it. Because the one thing with like you still can't take Beal because of the no trade clause. That still cannot be an option. But as long as it's not Jimmy Butler or not Bradley Beal, sign me up. Whatever it is, I'm good.
Cap space can't be the centerpiece of your plan, because that doesn't work. Like, I mean, Philadelphia did it, and they probably regret having done it, And so we're even hearing rumblings that Philadelphia might be interested in trading Paul George just to acquire Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, can't do that one.
To reunite Butler with Embiid. What's that?
I wouldn't do that one either, for the record.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. So they're loosening the restrictions on what they want. That was probably already going to be the case, but it also highlights the urgency with which this team is moving. As Windhorst was reporting, they're going to want to move him. They're going to take every call, make every call imaginable.
When he says that Jimmy Butler will get traded, I find that very interesting. Are we at the situation now where the Heat have offers on the table and they're just waiting for the best of the worst offers? Because whatever they should have traded him in the summer. I've been on that for a long time. Those offers would have been way better than what it would have been now. But understand that the offers are what they are now. Is it just like, and by them openly saying, hey, we've lowered our asking price here, that gets other non-Phoenix teams to get back on the phone. And a team like the Warriors, who might have not wanted to part with somebody like Jonathan Kuminga, because when Steve Kerr and Steph and Draymond are out here saying we don't want to mortgage the future, I actually do tend to believe them. I don't think that that's just a talking point. But what if you don't have to mortgage the future if you're Golden State now, right? And now it's just like, okay, here's some salary for Jimmy Butler. Like that, now you've reopened those lines of communication. You've reopened those trade negotiations with teams like Golden State, like Milwaukee, maybe even potentially Memphis. I wonder if if the Heat have offers and now they're just waiting because they suspended Jimmy Butler indefinitely. They actually don't have to rush. They can take this all the way to February 6th. But now they're just waiting for the best of the worst offers to come in.
I think that's exactly the plan. I think now they've given themselves a little room. They freed themselves of the on-court distraction, the talk about whether or not he's going to attend, where he's going to play, what his role is going to be, et cetera. It's like, you know what? Don't even come back. I would be surprised at this point if we even see him kind of welcome back into the practice facility, because I think that bridge may have burned a little bit. I don't know. I
Oh,
don't know. I
Jimmy?
know he came back. Yeah, Jimmy.
Oh,
You
he's
think he would
suspended.
be
Why would
allowed?
he practice for what?
Well, you know what I mean. Like we saw him, playing with Paul Pogba, playing dominoes with his agent in the locker room, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I mean,
Yeah. Those
this was
Domino's
while he was
games, I would
suspended.
imagine, have been shifted to the Casa there. The Casa. And, I think that's a
Yeah,
I think
so I had
that's
to be
safe
a
to
little
say.
bit more homebound.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you can just kind of say we have all these days to kind of figure out different deals, different policies, different
Mhm.
permutations, different combinations of sending players here, there. Like it's going to be active from the Heat front office perspective, and they're probably going to be talking to
Yeah.
every team in the league to try and get a little something here and there. And we know Pat Riley certainly isn't shy about having these kind of multi-team trades. My feeling would be probably that we'll start to hear rumblings of it the day of the trade deadline. I wouldn't be surprised if that's when we start to
You can take
hear.
it all the way down there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Take it down to the last
Well, I
stretch,
mean,
because that's that sense of urgency. Again, these things happen over the course of days and weeks, and obviously it's been a
yeah.
long process for everybody involved. But I think when you get close to that deadline, maybe you won't get that extra second round pick, or maybe you don't want to give up that player, but you do wind up giving him up because that's the only way to get any deal
Right,
done.
that's when the best offers come in, right? And that
Yeah,
tends to be what happens here, and other things change, right? Like, the NBA landscape changes dramatically very quickly, or at least it can. We've already just saw that on Tuesday afternoon with the news that the Kings are listening to trade offers for De'Aaron Fox. The Heat could potentially get in on this in a lot of different ways. I think they're gonna have a hard time maybe getting De'Aaron Fox, but maybe that loosens things up across the league, and Miami's able to shake free something else in a Jimmy Butler deal. So we're going to talk about whether or not the Heat can get in on De'Aaron Fox, how that connects to the Jimmy Butler situation, and what if De'Aaron Fox is willing to come to Miami? Is there a
mm.
path forward for that? We're going to talk about all that and more here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, the playoffs are here. Attending NFL playoffs is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. It's always so exciting. There's so much energy, just even covering Heat playoff games. There's so much fun. Obviously, you want to be there and be a part of it. And now you can, thanks to Game Time. They've got a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's so much to look forward to. Like, let's say you want to see this team, this revamped version of the Miami Heat after the NBA trade deadline. Well, guess what? Game Time will get you covered. You can use Game Time Picks for so many different things. I use it for concerts. You can use it for games, comedy shows, whatever you're looking for, you'll find it at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, and you get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team is a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. It was reported on Tuesday that the Kings are now listening to trade offers for De'Aaron Fox. It's widely believed that the Spurs are Fox's preferred destination. Before we get into whether or not the Heat can get in on a De'Aaron Fox trade, do you think he's worth pursuing, David?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great move. I think it's more along the lines of what Miami's building now, a younger team built for the future rather than some window that's always been kind of trapped between two different timelines now. And I think you've got you'll have Bam Adebayo as potentially the oldest player on the roster, at least the oldest contributing player, major rotation player on the roster. And now you'll have, whatever the Heat will be able to keep on this roster if they were able to pursue a move for Fox. Obviously, we'll still be on the younger side, but I think it's a great policy. I think it's a great idea for the Heat to kind of try and pursue their stars like this. And I think Fox is a great player. Like, he just scored 30 points a couple nights ago. Like, he's a really, really good player. He's young. There's a connection with Bam Adebayo. He's an all-star. he can get even better. I think, obviously there's contract issues, but it's also been Sacramento. They've kind of dimmed, as they tend to do, they dim everyone's light out there. And I think you bring him into the Miami Heat, and there's a good chance that he'll become even a better version of the player he's been. And if you can acquire him, absolutely. I don't see why you wouldn't.
Especially if you're able to keep Bam, obviously, but also Tyler Herro.
Sure.
If you're looking at a De'Aaron Fox, Tyler Herro, Bam Adebayo trio, that makes a lot of sense, especially if you're able to keep Kel'el Ware as a part of this too. Now, how would you do this? Is it Jimmy Butler going to one team? Stuff goes to Sacramento. More stuff comes from Miami, goes from Miami to Sacramento. That's the hard part here. De'Aaron Fox is reportedly, he has a preferred destination. There have been some local Sacramento-based reports that destination is San Antonio.
Why San Antonio?
What? Well, he has a Texas home. I think that's part of it. And also, I think he's interested. So from what I understand with De'Aaron Fox, so all right, I got a quick story for you, David. I haven't even told you this yet. I had an appointment this afternoon up in Broward, and I was driving back from Broward to Miami this afternoon, and I got a phone call from a Sacramento-based source asking me if I had heard anything about the Heat talking to Sacramento about a Jimmy Butler De'Aaron Fox trade. And I said, no, I had not heard that. Why are you asking me? And that source went on to tell me that the Kings had informed Rich Paul that they were open to trading De'Aaron Fox, and that his name had come up in some trade conversations, and that they wanted to let Rich Paul know before they found out in any other way, before, in other words, it leaked, and then they felt betrayed by them and say, hey, look, De'Aaron Fox's name has come up in trade talks, just letting you know ahead of time. I was working to confirm that report while Shams tweeted it out. I was literally talking to another source, and then Shams tweeted it out, and I was like, okay, that's all the confirmation I needed. So all of this was kind of happening in real time. And while I was like, why is this happening now? And basically what I was told is that the relationship between De'Aaron Fox and the Sacramento Kings, like I think it's pretty clear that has been fractured to a degree.
Yeah.
And he's obviously not signing the contract extension. And I think the Sacramento sees the writing on the wall. When De'Aaron Fox is out there saying, I did not want Mike Brown fired, again, I tend to believe him. I don't think he wanted Mike Brown fired. I think the way that it was handled, the way that Sacramento didn't ask De'Aaron Fox, didn't treat him like that superstar, I think has led him to this point, and maybe led Sacramento to this point too, where everybody realizes, frankly, we don't want to end up in the same situation that Miami and Jimmy Butler is in right now. We'd rather trade this guy early than have to deal with this late and it become uglier and become an issue and us potentially lose some leverage. We'd rather be more control of the situation. So then I think if you're De'Aaron Fox, look what he's had his whole career. It's been nothing but instability. Instability. And if I'm De'Aaron Fox, I want stability more than anything. And San Antonio has been a pillar of stability in the NBA. So you're telling me I get to go to Sacramento, I can go to San Antonio and be in a stable franchise, a place where I own a home in Texas. I think it's in a Houston area home, but close enough, I think. I don't know Texas that well. And then also I get to play with Victor Wembanyama, who kind of covers up for all of my deficiencies defensively, and a budding superstar. And I can kind of fast track my way into a championship ceiling, which I think is clearly what the San Antonio Spurs have within the next half decade. Why not San Antonio if you're De'Aaron Fox, right? But at the same time, if I'm craving stability, I could look at Miami and be like, that's also a pillar of stability. And they also have a defensive-minded center who can cover up for all my defensive deficiencies. And they also have a great head coach. And they also have a lot of things that I'm looking for.
He hasn't, his list, and you've talked about this before, the kind of repairing of the relationship that was once fractured between Miami and Rich Paul and Clutch Sports. This could certainly benefit the Heat.
Yep.
There isn't one list here. Like, we haven't got any kind of clear list. I don't, the reporting seems to indicate the Spurs, obviously, but there's no.
And we haven't heard, by the way, that the Spurs are interested in De'Aaron Fox. We haven't heard that part about it either.
Would they move Chris Paul in order to do
that? Maybe. I would imagine it would probably be everybody on the table except for Victor Wembanyama and probably Stephon Castle. I don't think they'd want to move him either. But I think they would be interested in De'Aaron Fox. I'm just saying we haven't heard that they are necessarily, not recently.
Given that Sacramento has won 7 of the last 10 games and they're making a little bit of a playoff push under Doug Christie as their new interim head coach, would they be interested in Jimmy Butler? Could this be the kind of trade scenario whether Butler might be able to go there and help out because he'd be playing alongside Domantas Sabonis, he'd be playing alongside Malik Monk,
DeMar DeRozan, the guy that he wanted in Miami, another guy that he wanted in Miami. It would be a very Kingsy move, wouldn't it? That would be sort of the Kingsiest way to do things. I don't know. I think if you're the Heat, you have to call and offer it. I don't know what Sacramento says, but you have to at least offer it. But if I'm also Sacramento, I want to see what San Antonio has because they have all the draft picks. And when you look at the teams that own like all the picks for the foreseeable future, it's San Antonio, Brooklyn, Oklahoma City. Like San Antonio is the only one that actually has that you could argue has a need for De'Aaron Fox. Like the Thunder aren't making that De'Aaron Fox move. That doesn't make sense for them. Like Brooklyn, that's not really in their timeline. So I think you look at San Antonio. If they put all those picks on the table, there's nothing Miami could do to beat that offer. But to your point, maybe Sacramento just says, we don't want picks. We want to win right now. We've been out of the playoffs for 2 decades. We're just now stepping onto the treadmill of mediocrity. We got more calories to burn. We're not ready to step off. Like we want to stay here. We want to stay exactly here. I don't know. Maybe, like I said, if you're the Heat, you have to call.
Seems like it's going to be a very active trade deadline, right? I mean, I know it's just really 2 names at the market, but I mean, once those 2 major dominoes fall or get talked about, it's a number of different teams that are going to be moving X picks, X players. You know, there's so much. I mean, it could involve Bradley Beal, it could involve Chris Middleton. Like, for a team that has been, for a league, I should say, that has been really desperate to kind of create this parity. Now all of a sudden, there's going to be a lot of different moving parts and players right in the next week or so, and it could really change the landscape of what happens in the NBA this season. So I mean, I'm excited. It's going to be interesting. I don't know what that means for Miami. Like at the very least, we know that Jimmy Butler will not be here. Like that seems at the very least, but what they get back and who they get back in exchange for Butler services, that remains to be seen. But it's an intriguing time there. I don't know. What do you feel about De'Aaron Fox? Do you think he's the player worth acquiring?
Yeah, if you can, as long as you're able to kind of keep the core of this thing intact, and I know that it's like a beggar's can't.
What's untouchable? What's untouchable? Tyler, Bam.
Yeah, and
basically, and Ware.
Yeah, to me, Ware would be untouchable. Everything else is on the table.
Wow, that's 2 weeks basically that he's changed your mind in regards to whether.
Well, because I think in order to maximize Bam, you need Ware. Or a player like Ware, and I don't see the other way to get a player like Ware. So I'm trying to maximize Bam. This is Bam's team now. Whatever it takes to maximize him. Exactly what we were talking about after the Magic game. That's what I want. So Ware to me is fundamental in that. Everything else would be on the table. To me, it's can we trade Jimmy Butler for more stuff that helps us get De'Aaron Fox? We have our picks. Maybe we can get those picks. Whatever else, we could send it to Sacramento and hope that San Antonio isn't ready to kind of, push the timeline forward and kind of get this thing rolling. That we hope that San Antonio is being a little bit more patient as then to throw everything into the mix for De'Aaron Fox.
Sacramento, you're craving some playoff experience. Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis, NBA champions, baby. I mean, we can reroute that if you want.
Light the beam. Light the beam. Listener questions coming up next, including what is the best possible offer for Jimmy Butler? Plus, you talked about Julius Randle earlier. Is that really a target for the Heat? We're going to talk about that next year on Locked On Heat. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. We got some listener questions from the Locked On Heat Insider community that we did not get a chance to get to in yesterday's post-game show. We promised you we would get to them now, and that is exactly what we are going to do here. So let's jump right in. Of course, reminder that you can sign up to the Locked On Heat Insider community by using the link in the show notes. It's free for 14 days, $4.99 a month after that. Cancel at any time. But like that story that I just shared about De'Aaron Fox and all that stuff, if you were an insider, you knew this hours ago because I shared it on that platform. And so we are sharing all the reporting, all of the intel. If you can't wait for the podcast or want stuff that doesn't even make the podcast, because we have a time limit here, do that by signing up to the Locked On Heat Insider community. Of course, you also get first dibs at asking these questions for the podcast. Jonah writes in, Is the triple big lineup the way forward, or is it just for bigger teams? I could see it being overwhelming, especially with Nico's on-ball skills. Lander writes in, should the lineup with Tyler Duncan, Nico, Bam, and Ware be the new starting lineup? Malachi writes in, I feel like the Miami Heat have found their main go-to lineup with Herro, Robinson, Jovic, Bam, and Ware. What do you all think? Max writes in, Herro, Robinson, Jovic, Bam, and Ware should be Miami's closing lineup. GX writes in, Jovic is playing like a 6-man of the year. However, would it be crazy to think he would be the best option to start at small forward? So many questions about that lineup. We talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show, David, but
Yeah.
now that we've slept on it, thought about it a little bit more, Herro, Robinson, Jovic, Bam, Ware, is that the future?
Absolutely. I was a little hesitant after the game yesterday, and I was even more hesitant when Kel'el Ware was first introduced into the starting lineup, and I took a little heat from that, no pun intended. But guess what? I'm changing course here. This is it. This is who you've got, and put out the size that you need in order to be able to dominate the rebounding edge. Have the balance between your offensive approach, the defensive versatility. You've got a shot blocker back there. You've got Nico, who's improving defensively and is a little bit more able to kind of keep pace with some of the perimeter attacks that he's been facing of late. I think he's also been kind of unheralded as a shot blocker, or at least a shot alterer because of his size. And you're getting obviously an incredible offensive repertoire and his ability to bring the ball up court. You've got the versatility, you've got the passing, you got Duncan Robinson lighting it up from three, Tyler Herro, one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. Kel'el Ware shooting 47% over the last few games that he's been starting. Do it. Let's roll. Come on. I'm tired of this kind of hedging here and this kind of doing nothing. Create an imbalance. Do something different. Absolutely. This is the way to go. Oh no!
So this is the lineup that I've
been. You're gonna cold feet? Okay, I thought you were gonna get cold feet.
No, this is the lineup. No, because you made a great point yesterday in terms of like, okay, what happens when you play Cleveland on Wednesday and they've got Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell? Like, who's guarding those guys? And do you really want it all falling on Kel'el Ware and Bam Adebayo to essentially just clean up the perimeter leaky defense? So I think it's a good point, but I do think like this is the lineup I've been dreaming of is the Herro, Duncan, Jovic, Bam, and Ware. Even going back to the preseason, I said once you feel comfortable with Ware starting, that might be the way to go. And I made the comparison before of Bam and Ware as sort of Miami's version of what the Cleveland Cavaliers do with Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, right? Where you just stagger those two. You always have one of them playing center, and then they obviously play a lot of their minutes together. Well, the other thing that Cleveland does is play 6'10" Dean Wade when he wasn't out for 2 weeks, which was announced on Tuesday. Play 6'10" Dean Wade at small forward. So not only is their big front court big, but their entire lineup is boosted because they're big 3 through 5, and then you can kind of just play whoever you want in that backcourt, where there are real questions about Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland playing together. But that is mitigated because you're just so freaking big everywhere else across the lineup. And that would be like Jovic could be the Dean Wade of that group. And then once one of the centers come out, then everybody just moves down a spot. And now you've got Bam and Jovic or Ware and Jovic at sort of a more, Jovic playing his more natural, maybe 4 position, even though you could argue he's probably more naturally a wing anyway. And that also maybe leans into Jovic's skills a little bit more, where he's a inconsistent rebounder, but he's a pretty consistent ball handler and shooter. And if you're playing him on the perimeter, that leans more into his strengths than it would him playing a big man position. So make the other teams match up, be different, be weird, and do it. And I think the rotation actually makes a little bit more sense. Haywood Highsmith, you could bring him off the bench. He could be your Swiss Army knife. He could step in as a 3 or a 4 regardless, but more likely than not, he would be playing the 3 more often because once you kind of move into your rotations, you got Jovic going back to the 4. So you've got that. You got Terry Rozier coming off the bench. You got Jaime Jaquez as sort of the 6th-man scorer, juicy kind of guy. I would say just what the heck with it. Just do it. Just do it. Go ahead.
No, you're going to get enough offensive production, though. Like, I mean, you've got Garland and Mitchell. Like, the comparison is an apt one, but
well, that's what makes getting De'Aaron Fox so important, doesn't it? And it really works.
You can keep Herro and Fox and somehow blend it with the other 3. I know that's
Fox,
keeping a lot.
Herro, Jovic, Bam, and Ware.
NBA title.
Let's go. It's like it's Cleveland Cavaliers light, except with Eric Spoelstra coaching and Bam Adebayo leading the defense. It'd be pretty.
There you go.
Pretty incredible. Andres writes in, is it me or does it feel like Kel'el Ware is a budding superstar? Superstar, David. What do you think about? Is there
I can't do it.
what? Okay, it is very premature to do superstar talk on Kel'el Ware, even though he might be the rookie of the year, and he is literally the betting favorite to win rookie of the year right now. I know that he didn't get named to the Rising Stars Challenge, and Heat fans could be upset with that. FYI, this stuff is voted on and decided like way more in advance than it's announced.
Let him use it. Let him use it as fuel.
And let him, 100% let him use it as fuel. Don't tell him that it was decided before he was like even a real part of the rotation. But
it was decided because he sucks. That's why.
Right,
That's
exactly.
exactly
They just
what
don't
I thought.
believe in you, Kel'el. They don't believe in your awesome nickname.
Yeah.
In terms of the budding superstar part, though, is there a superstar in the league that's of the Kel'el Ware prototype? Like, what is the best? Is it Anthony Davis? Is that sort of the best case scenario? Like, even Anthony Davis doesn't really have the 3-point shot, but I mean, AD is a future Hall of Famer. I mean, we're talking about a really high bar, but I'm like, take Ware's name out of it. Just that prototype of a player. Like, what is the best version of that currently in the NBA? Jaren Jackson Jr.?
Light.
Yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. No,
yeah,
I mean, one of one. I don't think. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, very, 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 very light. You know,
Very light.
But you know, in terms of like a 7-foot shot blocker that can stretch the floor, yeah, I think so. I mean, that's kind of what you'd hope for. But Jaren Jackson Jr., I guess that's it.
Probably,
although he's a little bit bulkier, but yeah, I could see that being a fair comparison.
And he's a perennial all-star guy. Sign me up. Yeah. A perennial fringe all-star guy. Probably a better way to put it. Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah,
sign me up. Another insider writes in, even with Pele's slow start coming back from injury, do you guys think that Pelle Larsson is a better fit than Jaime Jaquez in the rotation?
Oh, no, I don't think I've given it a lot of thought, to be honest with you, because I think Pelle is so inconsistent. His whole season has been so, and look, so is Jaime's. So at this point, I don't know that what Pelle. Again, we talked about this when Pelle was getting the bulk of the playing time early on. Like, you love his effort, you love his defensive presence and everything else like that, but he's still foul prone, he's still turnover prone. He can't hit a shot right now. He's still young, he's still a rookie. Obviously, it's going to take some time for him to kind of get into a comfortable, consistent rhythm. But at this point, I'd rather continue to lean into what Jaime can provide.
You have to, right? Like, you have to lean into the shot making, especially if you end up trading Jimmy Butler. Like, you're going to need that on-ball creation a little bit more. Last thing here, Eric writes in, is Julius Randle really a thing? This seems like clickbait. I wouldn't say it's clickbait necessarily. I would believe that his name came up because I think Minnesota is motivated to move Jimmy Butler, Julius Randle, and that
Miami was interested. Yeah.
Interested is like, tell me more. What did you have in mind, Julius Randle, and what? Like, you know, it's
right.
The language and all this stuff is so blurry. I would be surprised if Julius Randle played for the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler was playing again for the Minnesota Timberwolves. But you know what? I've been surprised before. Julius Randle's contract, though, might be the most important thing. He has a player option for $31 million next year. It sounds like most people. It sounds like most people anticipate. Whatever. It sounds like most people anticipate that he is going to opt out. So really what you would be trading for there is an impending free agent, an expiring contract, essentially, which I think Miami could probably do better than, but also, like we talked about already, maybe not. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.